Mr. Savoy said it wasn't dangerous and we didn't need to be afraid. She glowed. She just absolutely glowed. And the women, why are they treated differently? I'm trying to fight the fight here, but Mr. Savoy says it's not dangerous and don't be afraid. It was slowly eating away at them like a worm. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Okay, well, I hope wherever you are safe, well, you're possibly isolated at the moment. So yeah. Come on, world, we can do this. we can get through this. Okay. I'm just going to do some quick shout outs and then we're going to get to the story. Okay. Let's start with Molly Knapp Taylor. Hey Moll. saying that like I know you. I don't. But Molly has, get this right, she's listened to 56 episodes in 2 weeks. Molly. That is insane. That is well done, Molly. A round of applause for you. Very good. Okay, keep going strong, Molly. You can do it. Oh, hey, Lacey Radford. Now, Lacey, I have to be honest. You sent me a message on Instagram. I opened it. I read it. Completely misunderstood the message. I thought you'd written in your message, I've been arrested. Baz, can you help? No, it wasn't that at all. You were actually pointing me in the direction of a story that you thought would be interesting, and it happened to have the word arrest in it. So, I'm glad that that's not the case for you, Lacey. Wesley Lorraine, yo, thank you for the funny pictures on Facebook. Love it. Emma Archer, happy birthday, Emma. I think it's Monday. Did you say it was? Yeah, I think it was Monday. Emma sent a brilliant picture on the Facebook group of her standing next to a cactus, just to show what height she was, which I kind of loved. It was a bit like, I wondered if other people could like send images of them standing next to something, just for scale, you know, just to get an idea of what height people are. I don't know why, but there might be something in it. Naomi, I think it's Goddy. Naomi, anyway, hello, and Scout, the gorgeous puppy, how you doing? Laura Rosie Hennig, you got in touch to tell me, from last episode, hitchhikers do still exist. They are a thing. They're not a thing from the 1980s that you've not seen anymore. They actually still exist, okay? Thanks for that, Laura. And it's a massive shout out to Katia Hall. Hello. Now, Katia, everyone, is the teenage daughter of podcast listener Alicia Hall. So, hello to you as well. And Katia is doing something really important, which is she is spreading the message about men's mental health and suicide issues, which are, largely being ignored at the moment. This is something that's close to the family's heart, and Katia is doing just such a brilliant job. So, hello. Good luck to you, and thank you for what you're doing. Now, I've been saying Katia. I really hope it is Katia. It wouldn't be Katia, is it? Nah, that wouldn't make any sense. Katia. Got to be Katia. Alright, okay, well, I hope that was right anyway. And finally, Tim Granger. We've got another binger here. Tim has listened to 70 episodes in 2 weeks. Oh my god. Tim, that is a lot of me in your ears. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tim, for listening. Thanks, everyone who gets in touch. I appreciate it. Alright, this story. So interesting. I've been wanting to tell it for so long. It's been on my list for ages, and I thought, right now is the time. There's a lot of things in this story which changed many, many things in history. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Okay, to sort of set the scene, let's go way, way back to 1898. Don't worry, we won't be here for too long. This is just me setting the scene. Well, we need to talk about a woman, and her husband too, I suppose. And the woman is Marie Curie. Now, we all know who Marie Curie is, I imagine. She's probably one of the greatest physicists to ever exist. Marie and Pierre Curie are responsible for the discovery of chemicals which we just didn't even know existed. But they were both such experts at what they did that they discovered these incredible, incredible chemicals. I was quite flippant there about Pierre, wasn't I? I was a bit like, introducing Marie Curie. Oh yeah, and her husband. Now, I don't mean to do that. I don't mean to do Pierre a disservice. Because in his own right, he was, actually, before they met and married, he was this sort of brilliant physicist all of his own. Now, Marie Curie, she worked like a dog with a bone to discover new pioneering advances in chemicals, and one of the things that she discovered was radium. Now, this was about 1910 when she finally discovers it. Now, why did she call it radium? Well, she called it that because it gave off a light. And Marie and Pierre were looking at this chemical which had this sort of light coming from it, and they were like, what will we call it? What should we do with this? Oh wait, no, they were French, weren't they? What should we do with this? Well, they decided that because radius is Latin for ray, and this thing was giving off rays of light, they got to the word radium. Great, there you go. That's it. It's a very short history of probably one of the biggest scientific breakthroughs in history, and I told you it in less than a minute. Brilliant. Some people discovered something. Everyone went, yeah, that's great. Well done. Okay. No, I'm not. I'm being flippant, but yeah, genuinely mean that was an absolute massive breakthrough. So that's discovered. Let's go to 1917. And in 1917, there's a pretty major event happening in the world. You might have heard of it. It was called World War I. So the war is in full swing. And the world it's a changed place. Of course it is. War will do that. Soldiers from every country were off fighting for their own overseas. Women were left behind. There was, it was the war, basically. I mean, I don't know how how much more I could do to try and sum up what the war looked like. So when the men went off to fight, they became soldiers, what did the women do? Well, there were lots and lots and lots of jobs that women could have done. At the time, lots of jobs were created to, support the war effort. I mean, we're off to a pretty sexist start here, but some of the jobs that women could do included typing. You see those images of like those sort of black and white images of typing pools. All the ladies at the typewriters. God, they fascinate me, those images. What else? They could do some filing. There was packing groceries and dressing up shop windows. Sounds nice. There was post deliveries. So so there was this kind of thing of like women took over the roles that men had up until this point dominated. There was the teaching in schools of maths and spelling. Women became tram drivers, bus conductors. More and more care roles begin to open up. And of course there was the land army, the milking the coos, making the butter. So, I mean, there was this whole, of course, there was the women do your bit sort of, you see all that like propaganda. Oh, women, do your bit for the war. But what I think is really interesting is they wanted to. The women didn't, just because their husbands, their fathers, their whoever was off fighting, they weren't like going, oh, well, actually, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sit at home tonight, paint my nails, and read Vogue magazine. Do you know what I mean? They wanted jobs. They wanted to do things. So, let's turn our attention to one of the young women who really wanted to help the war effort. And this is Grace Fryer. Grace was 18 years old. Her two brothers had gone off to fight. Now, Grace lived in New Jersey. Grace, I'll say this before we get properly into her story. It's safe to say Grace had no idea that when she undertook a job in 1917, the things that would unfold would change the world forever. So here she is. She's smart, she's spirited, and she is ready to work. Now, near where Grace lived, there was a factory. It was the US Radium Corporation's first factory. So Grace, she applies for a job, she goes for an interview, and she gets it. Good for her. Good. Sweetheart, you're hired. I don't know who this man is. I don't know, I've got a kind of... Welcome to the factory, toots. I don't know, I really don't know who this man is. Oh, Gracie. I can just imagine him. Anyway, great. So, she gets this job. Brilliant. So she's really thrilled because she is ready to work. So, what was the job in the radium factory? I hear you ask, and I'm glad you did. Grace was employed as a dial painter. And dial painting is when you use a very, very particular paint on watches and on clocks and on military dials. And it's this sort of paint that's kind of luminous, and it will make the numbers on the watch face or the numbers on the clock shine when it's dark. So this job that she's got as a dial painter, it gets described as the elite job for poor working girls. Nice. In a job as a dial painter, you were paid 3 times more than other females. So those jobs we talked about earlier on, so the things like, becoming a postwoman or working on the farm, milking the coos and all that sort of jazz, you were paid 3 times more in this factory. So it's a pretty good job to get. Or is it? So on the day that Grace started her job, so did another 18-year-old called Molly Magia. And her and Grace, they become really good friends straight away. They both start on the same day and they end up sitting side by side. So all of these women in the factory, and there's hundreds of them, what did this painting dial business involve? What was that all about? And why did I start the whole story by talking about Marie Curie and radium? Well, it's because it was radium that was making the paint glow. That was what they were using to paint onto the clocks and the watches. The paint that they were using, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is total, like, we're going back to like glow in the dark. Essentially, is what I'm talking about, like that sort of green, luminous coloured paint. Think, like those skeleton suits that you get at Halloween when you turn the lights out and you just get all the shape of the bones and all that sort of stuff. That's properly what they were using. Now, the females in the factory, the workers, did go to Mr. Savoy, their boss, and say to him, is it safe for us to be using this? Like, is this a chemical we should be exposing ourselves to? And he said, yeah, it's absolutely fine. There's no problems with radium whatsoever. You're absolutely fine. Just go, get back, and get on with your painting. So, okay, all day, every day, that is what they did. So Grace and Molly, her new friend, they sit side by side in the factory, painting away, and radium starts to be talked about as a health benefit. People were doing things like they were adding radium to their water. You could go to a store and you could buy makeup or shampoo or toothpaste which had radium in it, because the adverts were telling us that radium is going to add years to your life. It's just so weird. It's like like when like smoking first became a thing, and it was almost like they considered it to be healthy. It's like, oh, it's healthy to do that. Well, I mean, consider me the Barry Henderson World Health Organization statement on this. I'm telling you, smoking, it ain't healthy. So it's sort of weird because they've got doubts about it. They're thinking, it's not been around terribly long, this chemical, and we're working with it every single day, but we're being told it's safe, and in actual fact, it's quite healthy for you. So they continue to work with it, all the hundreds of women in the factory. During World War I, the nightclubs, well, hang on, no, they wouldn't have been called nightclubs. The dance halls, I guess, maybe. Yeah, let's call them the dance halls. The dance halls, they were open, and after a hard week of painting at the factory, Grace and Molly, they would go out dancing with lots of other girls from the factory. Now, they got themselves a bit of a nickname, and that was the Ghost Girls. So people who would see them coming into the dance halls would be like, oh look, the Ghost Girls have arrived. And the reason that the factory workers were called this is because literally they glowed. They had like a shine around them. And I know this sounds unbelievable, but this is the genuine truth. Their teeth were like bright white. Their nails were so bright and just, yeah, like really, really clear looking. And some of the girls had used some radium as makeup. So that, yeah, their whole faces were just really glowing and bright with the light of radium. Were they just sitting about throwing radium on themselves? No, they weren't. This is actually what was happening. At the factory, each of the women had been taught a technique to do with painting. So the paintbrushes that they had, I mean, they were just a sort of small paintbrush, but the bristles on them were quite flat and they were quite large. So the technique, in order to get the bristles of the paintbrush to a place where you could delicately paint onto like a watch or, you know, something that was small and intricate was called the lip dick no, it wasn't called the lip dick paint. It was called the lip it was called the lip dick. Why do I keep wanting to say dick? Da 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 da. It was called the lip dip paint. Oh my god, that was painful for me to get out without saying the wrong words. So basically, lip dip paint went like this. You would take the brush in your hand and you would put it to your lips. And what you would do is you would use your lips to take the bristles of the brush and turn them into a fine point. Then you dipped it into the radium paint and you painted onto whatever the thing was in front of you. And then you repeated the process. So you see what's happening here? These girls, these hundreds of girls, are literally dipping their paintbrush into radium onto this, whatever they're painting, and then it's going back directly into their mouth. Now, there were people who said, well, could they not use, I don't know, like a rag or a cloth? Could they not use it to twist the bristles of the brush into the point that it needs to be nice and fine? And the bosses of the company felt, no, that just takes time. It's just going to slow the process down. We need this to be quick. We need it to be fast. So basically, their solution was get the girls to just stick the paintbrush in their mouth. That's the best way to do it. So these girls were, they were ingesting staggering amounts of radium. No wonder when they were going out to the dance halls, they were fucking glowing. Of course they were. Radium was running through their bloody body. Let's go back to Mr. Savoy, the manager, the man who hired Grace. Mr. Savoy, is all of this digestion of radium safe? His answer, yeah, it's totally safe. There's nothing to worry about. I know it's like different times and all that, right? Like, I get that, but if you were one of the people in one of these workers' lives, or you were one of those people in the dance halls, would you not be thinking it's really weird that they are glowing? Like, am I being daft? That is fucking odd. That's like a sci-fi film. There's something weird, but yet it continued, and the girls were just like, it's just what's happening because we're working with radium. But it's not unsafe. It's not harming us. It's just giving us a healthy glow. Okay. There's having a look, and there's like, ingesting radium in order to get said look. God, do you know what this makes me think of? This is actually, I'm so embarrassed by this because I don't know what the fuck I thought I was doing. This was years ago, right? I must have been about 18 years old. Well, I'm only 21 now, so it wasn't that long ago. I was going out to a club one night, and maybe, right, just maybe, we don't know because we don't have all the details, but I might have had a few drinks while I was getting ready, but that's just a maybe, okay? We don't know. And I decided on this night that I wanted to be covered head to toe in glitter. I just wanted to be covered head to toe in glitter. Now, let me talk you through my outfit. This night, I decided to wear a vest. Hello, gay much? And a kilt. Yeah, it's great. What the fuck was I thinking? I wore a vest and a kilt. And before we went out, I literally got my friends to throw glitter at me. I'm talking hundreds of glitter. I'm talking shitloads of glitter. And then I went out like, yeah, look at me going to the club. Fucking hell. Thank God things like Instagram did not exist back then, because I swear to God that photo would be somewhere and I would want to just jump off a cliff if I saw it. Anyway, that's enough about that. So, 3 more radium factories open up under the Radium Corporation across America, and they are thrilled because the company is growing and growing, and they can employ more and more workers. They're now up to 4,000 people working with radium every single day. So back to sort of Grace and Molly. They've kind of believed this idea that actually it's not harming them at all. So it's quite common practice now for the girls in the factory to paint their nails with a little bit of radium, rub a little bit on their teeth to make them nice and white. As I said, they would put it into their makeup before putting it on their face. Now, Grace, she gets to work one day. She's, enjoying her job. And she realises her friend Molly isn't in. Molly is off ill. So Grace is thinking, okay, that's strange. But she just goes about her day, lip, dip, paint. And then the second day comes, and Molly isn't back again. And now Grace is starting to really worry. And then later in that week, there starts to be a strange wave of illness that's going around the workers in the factory. A sickness bug is what the bosses will say is happening. But Grace is not so sure at this point. During lunch breaks, when the workers were together, the women would complain of just feeling unwell, not feeling right at all, but also not being able to pinpoint what it was. So they were talking about symptoms like stomach aches. Some of them had pain in their jaw, headaches, toothache. Some of them had sore legs, and they could feel sometimes swelling in their body. So Grace is listening to all of this. And I think what's great here is Grace is young, but she's not afraid to stand up to people and to herself. And so she becomes a little bit of a leader of the workers in the factory. And they go to their bosses. They go to Mr. Savoy and they say, look, this is weird. There's lots of people feeling really unwell. Okay, we've got people off through sickness, and you're still telling us it's okay. The bosses hold the party line. It is okay. But you see, the women have noticed something else, and this is so interesting. The few men who worked in the factory, the ones who didn't, become soldiers and go off to fight in the war, the few men who were employed by Radium Corporation, they were provided with metallic aprons and gloves. And they were never asked to lip, dip, and paint. So what's that about? Why are the men being given metallic aprons and gloves and not told to put the radium in their mouth, but the women are? It's fucking awful. It's just like going, well, you know what? Protect the men. The women? Nah. I mean, and they're livid. They are full on fucking furious about this. And I absolutely get that. I absolutely get that. Grace's friend Molly, she still isn't back to work. Molly's at home with what has started as a toothache. And she decides she needs to go to the dentist. So she does. Molly takes herself to the dentist, and I'll just warn you, what I'm going to describe next, it's not nice. She tells her dentist that she has a sore tooth at the back of her mouth, and he reaches his hand in to feel for where the bad tooth might be. And as he does, Molly's jawbone begins to crumble. He removes his hand, and when he takes his hand out of Molly's mouth, he has a part of her jaw and several of her teeth in his hand. At this point, he starts to gently prod at some of her other teeth, and one by one, they just fall right out of her gums. The day later, Molly is hospitalised and has to go for an emergency operation. And that operation is to remove her entire lower jaw. Whatever it was confused doctors. They could not understand what was this that was causing this in Molly, and now it was spreading through her body. It was literally ripping through her bones and her tissue. Molly's jugular vein burst and her mouth filled with blood. In hospital, doctors couldn't stop the bleeding. And 2 years after starting at the Radium Corporation, Molly died, aged 20. It's grim. Oof, so grim. Other people were also beginning to become really, really unwell. And doctors were just literally scratching their heads, so confused. What was happening? Now at the same time, Grace, she had some symptoms of her own. She had a bit of a sore jaw. She had sore feet, and she was experiencing a pain right down her back. So because doctors were ultimately just very confused, like what had done this to Molly? Why is a healthy 20-year-old's jaw crumbling away? Why are the veins in her body bursting and filling her mouth with blood? What is this? Because they can't discover what it is, the cause of death on Molly's death certificate will say it was syphilis. Now, syphilis in those times was also known as the sex disease. It was the World War I version of an STD or an STI, depending what country you're in. So because they didn't know what it was, so they thought, well, okay, what's something else that's killing a lot of people that we don't have a cure for? I know, syphilis. So the Radium Corporation, they refused to take any responsibility for Molly's death, and they say, no, it was syphilis. The doctors said it was syphilis. And of course people will argue, yeah, they're only saying that because they don't know that it's radium poisoning. Because they don't know that's what it is. They have to say it's something, so they're calling it syphilis. And the bosses of that company will say, no, Molly must have been a promiscuous girl. Who were these bosses? Nelly Furtado? Promiscuous girl. Remember that? And now, there's more and more and more deaths similar to Molly's. Tumours the size of watermelons were beginning to appear in the stomachs of some of the workers in the factory. They were starting to find lesions all over their body. Legs were swelling up to twice their normal size. People had breathing difficulties, internal bleeding. Now, Grace, she remains alive, but she is ill. Her body has definitely been attacked, and she's starting to really feel it now. But for 2 years, the company will say, nope, nothing to do with us. It's other diseases that are taking these women down. It is not radium related. However, given the number of people who are ill, who have died, the company agree, yeah, okay, we do have to do some kind of independent study. We will have to do something. So, an independent study is conducted and the results come back confirming that radium is what's causing the death of the workers. Mr. Savoy and the other bosses in the corporation, they just refuse to believe this. They just say, no. Nope, I'm sorry, I understand you've taken an independent study, but it must be wrong. Oh, come on. Wake up. You know fine well what's happening. Why have you protected your men from it then, eh? Not your women? Fuck off. So the bosses, essentially what they do is they have the whole thing hushed up. They just make it go quiet. That whole report just disappears. I was just about to say the words. It's unbelievable that a company could come in, do a study, and find this, and then it just be hushed up. But then I remembered it's 2020, and that's happening all the time, everywhere in the world. So I will not carry on with that ridiculous thought. Okay, enter into the story a man called Dr. Harrison Martland. And right, what does Harrison, Big Harry, well, what's his part in the story? Well, he has read the study and he's not happy that enough's not being done about it. So what he does is he devises a very particular set of tests and he carries them out on the women who work in the factory, and it's to test whether or not they are being poisoned by radium. Before he starts the experiment, I mean, he's already pretty sure what results he's going to find, so he goes ahead with his tests and it proves that actually, yes, it's radium beyond doubt that is killing the women in this company. He explains, once he has finished his experiments, what's happening inside of their bodies. He says the ingested radium has settled into the women's bodies and is now emitting a constant destructive radiation that is, and he uses this word, honeycombing their bones. It's literally boring holes inside while they're alive. So their bones were becoming covered by this honeycomb of radium poisoning. In all of this, he tests Grace. And what's happened for Grace is, do you remember I said she was complaining of a sore back? Essentially, her spine has been crushed by radium, and she has to wear a steel back brace. For some reason, and he doesn't really get to the bottom of it, and I don't think any experiments actually do, but particularly in the jaw area for some of the workers was the worst place. What's happening is jaws are basically being so badly attacked that they're becoming worn away and they're just falling apart. I mean, fucking hell, people are just losing the bottom half of their face. It's horrendous. And it's, you know, what's so interesting about that as well is Pierre Curie once remarked years before this happened, when him and his wife had discovered radium, he said, I would not want to be in a room that had radium in it, because it would probably burn the skin off of you. It would destroy your eyesight, and ultimately it would kill you. The main finding that Dr. Harrison has is that yes, this is what's killing them, and now that it's in their bodies, there is no way to remove it. So, if you can't remove it from their bodies, what has to stop is they have to stop ingesting it. People just have to stop having it anywhere near them. But remember I told you, the corporation has now got 4 factories across the US. Okay? So even with the proof in their face from a doctor The company are still saying, no, it's not to do with us. Now, what they're not counting on, they're not counting on Grace. Grace has courage beyond belief, and she's going to stand up to the bigger bosses in this company, and she's going to say, look, we are not taking this. Grace says, it is not for myself that I care. I'm thinking more of the hundreds and the thousands of girls who are exposed to this daily. So what she does is, she essentially leads a little group of workers into a legal battle. She wants radium banned. She wants it gone. So there's Grace, and there's a few other women from the factory, and they sort of bandy together and they decide they're going to be the force that stops this, that breaks this down. Now, the difficulty that they have is that no lawyer will touch this case. Grace can try as hard as she wants. The problem is, no lawyers in the USA want to take down a major corporation. There's fear around it. There's like the idea of, they're a major company. They have millions. We don't. So I'm afraid no. But eventually, and it takes time, it really takes time. But eventually, a young lawyer called Raymond Berry gets involved, and he decides, he will take Grace's case on. Raymond Berry. Fantastic name. I love that. I feel like in a previous life I might have been called Raymond Berry. Barry Berry. Love it. Berry. Although Berry, of course, is how the Canadians say my name. Hola. Shout out to Canada. How you doing over there? Yeah, I used to work with a woman years ago, and she used to be like, hey Barry, have you got this thing that I'm looking for? And people would be like, and typical Scottish subtle as a brick, do you know his name's Barry and not Berry? And she'd be like, oh sorry, I thought I was saying, where's she from now? She's not from Canada anymore. She would be like, she would be saying things like, sorry, I thought I was saying Barry. And everyone was like, no, you're saying Berry. And I was like, right, give the woman a break, right? I think she thinks she's saying, it never bothered me, but it seemed to bother other people. Anyway, Barry Berry. Right, good. So I've lost the plot of what I was talking about. Right, so Grace is got her 4 colleagues, and they are going to fight this case. Now, one of these colleagues is called Catherine, and we'll get to know about her just in a second. So they have major success. The 5 women and Raymond Berry have big success because they get the case into court. Excellent. It was the trial of the century. Then Grace gets some devastating news. The levels of radium in her body mean that she now has 6 months to live. Now, the company she once worked for, they hear this information, and this is what they do. They start to delay the court case as much as they possibly can, hoping that Grace will die, essentially, is what they hope. That they can push the court case back further and further and further, so that when it gets there, this ringleader, Grace, won't be there, and the whole thing will fall apart. So what happens is, because Grace has been given 6 months to live, the court case gets pulled, and the whole thing gets settled out of court. Now, this is where this story is a major moment in history. This was the first time any employer in the USA had ever had to hand over money to employees because of something that they had done wrong. I mean, it's huge. So now, right, nowadays, we know we're protected in our workplaces, in our workspaces. We know that, there's environmental health, there's all of these things in place to protect us. But there wasn't in this time. They just didn't exist. So what Grace actually manages to achieve out of this is getting the company to take some ownership for it and say, okay, we will pay you money for the horrendous health things that you're going through and the fact that you are young and you only have 6 months to live. They hand over money. And that changes everything. That changes how every single company in the world now has to protect its employees. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry to keep hammering on the same point, but it just hadn't happened until this moment with Grace and the Radium Girls. So interesting. Now, I'm sad to say that at the age of 28, just 10 years after starting at the Radium Corporation, Grace dies of radium poisoning. So the group of girls that she leaves behind, they're still fighting the fight. They continue to fight it, but one by one they all slowly die. There is one who holds on just a little bit longer, and she is the one I mentioned a second ago, Catherine. She's so passionate about it that she will still talk to reporters, still talk to lawyers, still talk to anyone who will listen on her deathbed. As she's lying there knowing that she has hours to live, she's literally like, nope, I'm going to tell you all about lip dip paint. I'm going to talk to you about the fact that the men were given protection and we weren't, because these women were just like, we will not die and this and not get and give up the fight here. Eventually, and I mean it takes years for this to happen, the Radium Corporation have to pay out thousands upon thousands to families, to victims. They pay the healthcare bills of workers who've ever come into contact with the paint. They cover funeral costs, and the use of radium in the way that it's being used is banned. So it's a shame that Grace didn't survive to see that happen, but you know, she got what she was fighting for. So there were 4 factories, as I said, there were 4,000 employees, and of that 70 died in the most horrific ways. Tumours, lesions, internal bleeding. And what of the survivors? Well, fucking away, this is even worse. I mean, it's just horrendous. Those who didn't die survived, and that's great, but not really, because what they put up with was a life of illness. These women were not able to conceive. They had heart problems. They all went on in one way or another to end up, by the time they were in their mid-40s, with really devastating chronic conditions. And yeah, okay, they weren't one of the ones who died at 20 years old, but the rest of their life was just dogged with hellish health concerns. In 2014, quite a distance away from the period of time that we were in 2014, the last Radium Girl died, and her name was May Keane. She lived to, get this, 107 years old. Fuck me, 107? Wowzers. Now, you might ask, okay, so there was all this death, there was all this illness, how did May Keane survive? Well, I'll tell you. It's because she worked in the same factory that Grace and Molly worked in, but she only lasted a week. So she started her job, she was shown the lip dip paint technique, and immediately she had a bad feeling. She went, something is not right about this. Something's not right. So she left. But from only 1 week's worth of being there, that little tiny amount of radium that she ingested, she had health issues her entire life. And yeah, I mean, she did live to, 107, but pretty unhealthily lived to that age. But I guess, I mean, some people could argue, yeah, well, she was one of the lucky ones, and yeah, she was. And so, yeah, to end, it's just horrendous. It's just tragic. I don't believe for for 1 second, that corporation, that company did not know what was the danger of putting workers so close to radium and actually making them ingest it. And it's tragic, it's horrible what happened. But I think it's a story we need to know because of what that's done for workers' rights around the world. And I guess, if you have learned anything from this story, it's this. If your boss asks you to lip, dip and paint, tell them to fuck right off. And so ends the story. Okay, I'm not going to do my usual, here's the social medias, do this. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect upon the fact that I get a staggering number of messages and emails in a week from people who say, thank you so much for the podcast. It really helps because I'm suffering with really bad mental health. I've got anxiety, I've got depression, all of these things. And I, A, really appreciate that you reach out, and B, really, I'm stunned that the podcast could actually help anyone who felt like that. So, rather than my usual babble at the end, I just wanted to say, if you are someone out there, or you know someone out there who's having a tough time mentally, please speak to someone. Please help other people to speak to someone, because it's so often the biggest barrier is that people don't want to talk about it. They don't know where to go. There are so many organisations. Wherever you are in the world, there will be organisations that can help you. Okay? So, I just wanted to say, I know we're living right now with coronavirus panic, but mental health is going to be the biggest killer of us. And so if you can do something about it, or help someone to do something about it, don't be scared, and don't be too proud. And when I say don't be too proud, I'm talking men to you. Listen to me. Do not be too proud. I'm talking to everyone, but I'm floored by the number of male suicides around the world because men just will not go to the GP. They just will not go to these places and say that they're struggling. So instead take their own lives. But this isn't just men specific. This is everyone. This is everyone. Whether you're 14 and you're listening to this, or you're 65, whether you're man, woman, transgender, I don't know. Whoever you are, go and ask for help.